right outside, so come on in, don't be shy. We've got ghosts and UFOs. Brace yourself, get ready for the show. Don't be afraid of the dark. The fun's about to start. Nightmares or tales will inspire. Oh, tonight at the Scaredy Campfire. Have you heard tell of a demon next door? Or maybe a cryptid on the lake shore? There's nothing too strange for us here. So if you're ready, stamp out your fear. Don't be afraid of the dark. The fun's about to start. Nightmares or tales will inspire. Tonight at the Scaredy Campfire. Whoa, whoa.
Welcome back, campers, to episode 69 of The Scaredy Campfires. This story begins with the feeling that you've been here before, the strange familiarity of a moment repeating itself, slightly different each time, as if something is testing how closely you're paying attention. Tonight's first story comes from Reddit user who shared a chilling experience from a series of camping trips in the wilds of Montana. Over several nights, strange footsteps circled their tent in the early morning hours, heavy, deliberate, but without any sign of a visitor. Each morning the sounds stopped abruptly, leaving only unanswered questions and a growing unease in the silence of the woods. Despite searching, no footprints ever appeared beyond their own, and a strange abandoned shelter added to the mystery. I used to go on a lot of camping trips with a friend of mine after college. Most of our trips were in Montana, since that's where we both lived at the time, and that's where the story takes place. My friend Jude and I would spontaneously leave on camping road trips where we'd just pick a direction and drive until we found somewhere cool to hike and camp. Sometimes we'd look up trails and add 1 or 2 day backpacking adventures on these trips, but more often than not we'd end up in an empty campground or a pull-off on a Forest Service road and set up our tent right next to the car for the night. Looking back, I was wildly irresponsible because we never told anyone where we were going. We almost never had a plan, so if we had gone missing, there would have been no clue where to start looking. We also almost never had cell service where we camped. This creepy camping story began in 2020. At the height of Jude's and my spontaneous camping phase, I had taken a week off work and we decided to go up to the Glacier-National-Park to hike and camp for several days, which we did. Because it was during COVID, camping inside the park wasn't allowed, so we had to find random places to camp each night. We stayed at one campground about 180 miles from the West Glacier on the way up, then found a different spot each night as we got closer to the park. All of our campsites near the park were between 10 and 25 miles apart, because it was difficult to find spots that were both legal to camp in and not already taken by other park visitors. This meant we sometimes spent hours driving up random Forest Service roads looking for somewhere secluded to sleep. Still, we always managed to find something, and here's where it gets creepy. The first night we stayed at a campground near Drummond, about 180 miles from the West Glacier, Early in the morning, just as it was starting to get light, I heard something walking around our tent. The campground had a few other campers, so at first I thought maybe someone was looking for the bathroom. The steps were heavy and deliberate, like whoever or whatever it was wasn't trying to be quiet. The ground was grassy, so I couldn't hear individual footfalls, just the crushing and shifting of the grass and twigs. Whatever it was walked within a few feet of our tent, coming from the side facing the woods, not the road or the other campsites. I was only half awake and I remember thinking two things. First, I was glad I'd made sure Jude locked the car. Second, I really hoped it was just a very bold deer and not a human. I was exhausted and didn't want to think about anything creepy, so I tried to fall back asleep. Eventually, the sounds stopped, though I don't remember hearing it move away. It just wasn't there anymore. Jude had prescription sleeping pills and was a very deep sleeper, so I assumed he slept through the whole thing. When we got up later that morning, I didn't think much of it and didn't mention it to him. The second night, we were near West Glacier after a long day of hiking and found a spot not far from the park entrance. It wasn't a designated campground, just a series of dirt roads in a wooded area. We'd seen other people pulled off and camping out in their cars, just like we were. Our tent was set up right next to the car since there wasn't much open space in the pull-off we found. Again, in the early hours of the morning, just as it was getting light, I woke up and heard someone walking around our tent. This time the grass wasn't as tall, and I distinctly heard the heavy footsteps of a person walking right beside our tent and then around the car. Again, I felt relieved that Jude had locked the car. The footsteps came from the woods, not the road, and continued moving around our tent for a while before eventually stopping again without moving away. I went back to sleep and woke up a couple of hours later with Jude, thinking nothing more of it. I assumed it was someone hiking through the area who'd cut through our campsite as a shortcut. I didn't mention it to Jude. The third night, it took us a very long time to find a campsite. It was pouring rain and we were both exhausted from a 13-mile hike. After 3 hours of searching, we finally settled on a pull-off of a dirt road above the Hungry Horse Dam. We were uneasy about the spot because it wasn't a Forest Service road and we were worried about traffic or getting told by cops not to camp here. It was remote, but not remote enough, if that makes sense. The pull-off looked like a small road that went nowhere, probably used to push snow during winter plowing. It went about 50 yards into the woods and ended at a dirt mound. There was an old fire pit and broken glass at the end, so we set up our tent near the entrance. It was still pouring rain. Jude walked barefoot in the mud while I kept my shoes on and examined the fire pit and broken bottles. Then we went to sleep. I noticed too late that Jude hadn't locked the car. He was already asleep with the keys in his pocket, and I was too tired to get out and lock it manually. Plus, it was still raining and I didn't want to get wet. In the morning, just as it was starting to get light, I woke up and heard something moving in the woods above our tent. At first, I thought it was a deer because the steps were quieter than the previous mornings. Then whatever it was came down onto the pull-off where our tent was and began moving around our car. The tent was only about 3 feet from the car, so I could hear it very clearly. The ground was muddy, so the footsteps were muffled. Then I heard the car door open. Up until that moment, I'd been only half awake. That sound snapped me fully alert, but I still wasn't entirely sure what I'd heard, so I stayed still and listened. Whatever it was continued moving around near the car. There was no sound of another vehicle, so it must have walked there. Then I heard the car door shut. At that point, I sat up, waking Jude, and said, "I'm going to go check that out." I still can't believe my nerve in that moment, but being scared, numb, and sleep-deprived can make you stupidly brave. I quickly put on my shoes and opened the tent. By then, the sounds had completely stopped. The tent was right next to the car on the same side of the woods. I would have heard someone walking away. When I stepped out, the first thing I noticed was that no one was around or inside the car. It was Jude's car and he's a bit of a mess, so no one could have been there without sitting in the front seats anyway. The second thing I noticed was that the ground was muddy all around the tent and car, and the only footsteps were mine and Jude's. I followed his barefoot tracks to make sure every print matched his. There were no footprints coming from or leading back into the woods. I checked the car and found nothing out of place, no signs of disturbance. I walked over to the fire pit and again only saw my own footprints. Then I did the stupid thing and went past the fire pit into the woods. There I found a strange makeshift shelter made of pallets with blankets and women's undergarments inside. At first it terrified me. I thought there might be a body in there, but upon close inspection it was completely rained out and undisturbed. No one had been there for a long time. I didn't touch anything and only got within a few feet before turning around. I went back to the car and sat inside while Jude fully woke up. Then we packed up and didn't mention the incident to each other at all that day. The fourth night, we found a really cool spot below a dirt road on the west side of the park. A man briefly walked into our campsite, but he seemed to be scouting a place to camp with his family and hadn't realized we were there. Other than that, the evening was uneventful. We went to bed early because Jude wanted to catch the sunrise. I was afraid I'd missed my alarm, so I woke up in the middle of the night and immediately heard something moving around outside our tent. This time it was directly behind us, in the direction we'd come from, where we'd parked the car. I remember feeling annoyed that it was happening again when all I wanted was sleep. Eventually the sounds stopped and I fell asleep. We got up before dawn, broke camp and packed up quietly. My alarm was loud and woke Jude too. I forgot about the sounds, helped pack everything up and didn't mention it. I felt relieved once we were inside the locked car and driving away, though I've always been a little afraid of the dark. We saw a spectacular sunrise that morning. Later, while driving to get breakfast and coffee before heading home, Jude looked at me and said, "Have you been hearing something outside our tent every morning?" I stared at him and said, "Yes. Remember? I got up to investigate it yesterday." He replied, "Yeah, that's really weird. I've been hearing it every morning too." We talked about how strange it was that we'd both heard it, but neither of us felt compelled to mention it at that time. Even though it was unsettling, something in subconscious made us both dismiss it. To this day, I get chills thinking about it, especially the fact that I actually got out of the tent to investigate. What's strangest is that in those moments I remember acknowledging how creepy it was, but not actually feeling afraid. Clearly I wasn't too worried since I never once brought it up to Jude. So that's my creepy camping story. I should add that this wasn't the first or last time I've heard something moving around a tent while camping, but this was the first time it happened so consistently, and the only time I ever went out to see what it was. I've camped through nights with black bears, elk, and deer nearby, but I've never experienced anything quite like this. The sudden stopping of the sound and the fact that we were in a different place every night made it especially unsettling. To this day, Jude is completely unconcerned about it, while I find it more disturbing every time I retell the story. What do you think it was? Just a series of unsettling coincidences, or something else? Even now, the user wonders what exactly haunted those remote campsites. The echo of unseen footsteps or something far stranger lurking just beyond the trees. Though the presence was silent and never seen, its shadow still lingers in the quiet moments, a reminder that some nights in the wilderness are far more unsettling than others. Tonight's second and final story comes from Reddit user u/transitory2, who has felt an unsettling presence lurking in the basement of their family home since childhood. Through flickering lights timed with the tap of a plastic wand and ghostly visions in the shadows, something watches and interacts, sometimes almost playfully, but always from the darkness below. My little sister and I have known there was a presence in the basement since we were children. We are both adults. While our parents are too scientific to believe us, we know there have been incidents. I can only share the ones that belong to me, and sometimes I wonder if my mind is making it up to fool me. I remember the time when I was a child and my parents told me to go downstairs for some reason. The lights were off and I had a horrible feeling, but I had my orders. I remember going downstairs and looking through the gap in the wall at the bottom of the stairs that leads to the playroom and seeing the glowing figure of a lady who looked like an old-fashioned movie star. I've never run upstairs so fast. Later I realized she was standing in the center of where an old-fashioned odd fireplace had been before we remodeled. I still remember running up the stairs every time it was my time to turn off the lights, feeling safe when I got to the top. The thing is, though we get scary vibes from this presence, it's not all bad. There was a time when I was doing a magic show for my parents down there as a kid and getting everything wrong and so sad. I tapped something with my plastic wand and the lights in the laundry room nearby turned off. We were all like, wow, that was weird. But then when I finished the trick and tapped it again, they turned back on. Both of these times were the exact moment I tapped. I think it took pity on me. All in all, it stays in the basement. My sister goes down there way more than I do nowadays, as it's become her art studio of sorts, and a place where she relaxes and enjoys playing with things. But last night, partly through the night, when I woke up for a snack, I legit heard my dad's voice coming from downstairs, and he was asleep. I double-checked where he would be if awake. Our house was built in the 50s or right before, so it's possible things could have been readjusting, but that doesn't happen often since the house is relatively modern, and I swear it sounded exactly like my dad. All in all, the presence has a bad feel, but it's never hurt us. Both myself and my sister believe in it, and our parents don't. I just felt like sharing due to the voice I heard last night. Whatever dwells beneath the house is a mystery, neither fully frightening nor fully understood, but it is a presence that cannot be ignored. For the user and their sister, the basement holds more than memories. It holds something watching, waiting, and perhaps even reaching out in the quiet hours when the house falls still. That concludes episode 69, Campers. If tonight feels oddly familiar, don't try to retrace your steps. Some paths are meant to loop. Until we gather again, stay near the fire and don't follow where the trail repeats.
As the night gets longer and the darkness creeps in, with the eerie silence broken only by whispering wind, come gather round the fire, the flickering flames, and hear the tales of the spooky and the strange. Chill up your back, a shiver up your spine. You'll be haunted by the things that you find. Legends will unfold and stories will be told at the scary campfire, for only the bold